Hi. For today's video, I'm going to be discussing chess terms, mainly for those who are unenlightened in the ways and the knowledge of the chess terms. So you might not understand what I mean when I say, oh, he went for a crazy gambit during that Bughouse game. So, if you had any idea what I just said there, this video probably isn't for you. But but if you didn't, then this is the perfect video for you. Now, you might wonder in chess terms, I'm not going to cover things like forks, pins, x-rays, and skewers because I believe that those are tactics and those are meant for require more visual, or require a visual at least to understand what they mean and how to use them. So I'll be covering that in a chess tactics video. However, for this video, I'll just be covering more of the basic terms that you need to know. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, why do I need to know these terms? Well, first, it'll increase your knowledge of the game. It's pretty cool, knowing more about the game that you're clearly playing and having a good time with it, I hope. If you're not having a good time with it, then, I don't know, let's go play the Scandinavian or something. That shit's fun. It'll help you understand chess streamers and analyzers. So, for example, chess streamers such as Alexandra Botez, the Chess Bras, Hikaru Nakamura, and all them, when they say given terms or they say something, you can now understand what they mean. And then it can also help you understand analyzers, people who analyze the games on YouTube or on stream, also like Hikaru, like Chess.com, like Chess24, like Agad Mater on YouTube, or even Chess Talk on YouTube as well. So those are all some very good places that I recommend you go to. And so you won't be constantly Google searching, what does Gambit mean? No. Or what does he mean Armageddon game? Now, just knowing these is going to get better, and it'll even help you get better at the game, because simply knowing these terms or knowing how the different things work can definitely increase your game knowledge. Now, the tactics will increase your game in terms from a rank perspective much more than this video will, but this video has the added benefit of telling you how to flex on casuals. Now, if you're new to chess, like you've only been playing like a month maybe, and you know all these terms, your friend who's been playing a week is going to think you're a grandmaster. But realistically, his rank is 400 and your rank is 600. So don't get too ahead of yourself, but you can seem like a god for those few days until he comes to his senses. Now, the first thing we're going to understand is the difference between material and positional, mainly when referring to advantages. Now, the material, or when someone says the material on the board is equal, it means that each side has the same number of pieces on the board, and the pieces are the same. Or they have the same value, at least. So one side might have a bishop against a knight, but those are both equal, as we'll show in the next slide, I believe. Now, a positional advantage refers to an advantage where you have a better position on the board. So if they say, oh, this guy has a material advantage, then they have more pieces, so they have an extra pawn, or they have a bishop or they have an extra bishop or something. Whereas a positional advantage means that they probably don't have a material advantage, they don't have any extra pieces, but their position is much better. Or it could even be that they're down in material, but they have a better position, so therefore that can make up for it. Now, these three terms, checkmate, resigning, and forced moves, are all kind of just basic things that you should really know in chess. In fact, that's this entire video. Now, checkmate is when the king is under attack. It's, as we would say, in check, and it cannot move anywhere, nor can any piece block the check, and the side that put the king into this checkmate wins the game. Now, resigning is when one player agrees to forfeit the match. Either they see that, oh, okay, after black plays these three moves, white will be in checkmate and there's nothing he can do to stop it, so why would I let him play out the moves and give him the satisfaction? I'll just resign so that I decide when I lose, not him. And this is basically when one player agrees that there's nothing more they can do in the position. The position is overwhelming. They're going to lose this. It's only a matter of time. Why would I waste my time playing this out? And finally, forced moves. Forced moves is when it's one side's turn to move, and there's only one possible move on the board they can make. On the move. I say possible, I should say one legal move that they can make, because in theory they could just pick up a pawn and, I don't know, throw it on the queening square and make it jump from h7 to h1 in a second. But that's an illegal move, and therefore they would lose the game because of that. Of course, if you make illegal moves in an actual chess tournament, there's penalties. I don't think you lose the game immediately, but there's definitely penalties. But anyway, forced moves is when there's only one side only has one legal move to make, so they are forced to make that move. These are the pieces. As much as everyone would like to say pawns, horses, bishops, castles, queens, and kings, or even towers, that's just not what they're called. They're called pawns, knights, bishops, rooks, queens, and kings. And now, while it's perfectly fine when you're first starting out to say horses instead of knights or castles instead of rooks, when you see someone analyzing the game, they're gonna say knights, they're gonna say rooks. You could even, but still, it's always good to make sure that you know what they mean at least, and that you have these ideas. Didn't mean to push that. Cool story keyboard. Now, each piece has a point value associated with it, and this is a good way to help you understand if one side has a material advantage or not. So pawns are worth 1, knights are worth 3, bishops are also worth 3, rooks are worth 5, queens are worth 9, and the king is worth infinite, of course, because if you lose the queen, you lose the king, you lose the game. So, say say white has 3 pawns and the king and a knight, whereas black has bishop, knight, and king. Now, in terms of a material perspective, they are perfectly even, because while black has the knight, has the bishop has an extra bishop, white has those 3 pawns, and since pawns are worth 1 and bishops are worth 3, 3 pawns equals 3, so it's perfectly equal for material. Now, depending on the position, black or white could have a strong positional advantage, but again, it would depend completely on where the pawns are situated, how close they are to each other, etc., etc. Files and ranks. Files are the vertical lines along the board, and ranks are the horizontal lines along the board. Files are associated with letters from A to H, and ranks are associated with numbers from 1 to 8. Now, a file is considered open if there are no pawns on the file. And now you want to get your rooks onto open files. And this is because then the rook isn't blocked by anything. Now, a semi-open file is when there's only one pawn on the file. Normally this refers to when it's the opposing side's pawn on the file and you still want to get your rook onto these semi-open files. However, I don't see why it couldn't be used to describe a file where there's your pawn on that. In fact, it'd be putting rook behind your pawns, which is a good principle to have. Blunders, mistakes, and inaccuracies. You'll hear these words thrown around, and you might not really understand what they mean. Now, you might also see it when you're trying to analyze your own game. Stockfish will say, oh, this is an inaccuracy, or this is a mistake. Now, you might not wonder what it means. Now, of course, you'll also see other things when you're analyzing your game, such as book move, best move, good move, things like that. Now, those are pretty obvious. Book moves are moves that are within standard theory, and grandmasters and people who analyze chess and don't really play, just go through the theory of it, have agreed that these are good moves, and these are book moves. These are things that if you were to read about chess in a book, it would be there. These moves would be there. A best move is the best move in a position, and a good move it's not the best move in the position, but it's a good move to play. An inaccuracy, however, it's not a mistake, but it's not a good move either. It usually is a move that doesn't accomplish anything, but also doesn't hurt your position, or it doesn't accomplish enough fast enough. So that's why it can also be known as a slow move, because the move was too slow. Now, mistakes are moves that directly harm your position, usually resulting in the opposing side gaining a minor material or positional advantage. These games are still, usually it's a mistake loses you a pawn. Now, These positions are still completely playable, even at the highest ranks, even at the highest levels, but you kind of want to avoid making mistakes, obviously. And you really want to avoid making blunders, because blunders are moves that directly harm your position and result in the opposing side gaining a strong material advantage or a strong positional advantage. And some blunders can even cost you the game. There's a famous quote in chess that one blunder can ruin 40 good moves. Now, this is actually perfectly true, because say you trade your queen for their bishop or something like that. That would be a blunder, because they now have a strong material advantage of +6, and because they have that queen that can do much more than your extra bishop could ever do, you've, in most positions, the side with the extra queen will win this game, or will win that game. And I said you want to avoid making mistakes. You should avoid blunders at all cost. Check and tempo. Check is when a piece attacks the opposing king. This is a pretty obvious term for you to know, and I know a lot of people, even people who don't know the game, are very familiar, who don't play the game, are very familiar with this. However, it is important for me to say, because it kind of plays into the next one. Now, whenever you are checked, remember that you can either move your king away, like to kind of run away from hide from the check, or you can block the check with a piece. So don't immediately go to your king every time to move your king every time you get checked. Tempo. Tempo is when you move a piece to a position where it directly attacks or creates a dangerous threat on the board. Now, these moves are usually positional and come with the threat of capturing rather than actually capturing a piece, because if they actually capture, then it wouldn't be capturing with tempo, it would just be capturing. Although there are some situations where, of course, there are some situations where you can capture with tempo. But either way, it's important to use these it's important to understand that moving with tempo can kind of usually forces one side to react to it. And therefore, you can essentially force them to move back, or you force them to do something. But either way, you make them waste a move. Time formats. Time formats are given into classical, rapid, blitz, and bullet. Classical refers to any time format where either side has 30 or more minutes per side. So they can play all their moves. So each side has 30 minutes to play its moves. Rapid is when each side has 10 to 15 minutes. Blitz is usually 3 to 5 minutes, and bullet is 1 to 2 minutes. When you're just starting out in chess, I would highly recommend you play in the rapid section, because it gives you time to think. It gives you a lot of time to think, but it isn't so long like classical that you have to wait 20 minutes per move. Now, many time formats include what is known as increment. Now, increment is the amount of time you gain after each move. So, for example, if I'm playing a 10-minute game with 5 seconds of increment, then I have 10 minutes on the clock, but every time I play a move, I get an extra 5 minutes on my clock, and the same for my opponent. These time formats are also extremely good because it helps you. It kind of means that you're not under as much time pressure as normal. However, they can also lead to games where you're playing your moves extremely quickly and you have 14 minutes on the clock when you're only supposed to have 10 max. So, do with it as you will. Game types and variants. So, there's chess, which is the original, the game, the OG, the thing that we all enjoy, love, and then hate the second we blunder or something. There's Chess 960, where it's regular chess, but all the pieces on the back rank, which is the first rank for white and the 8th rank for black, are randomized. So instead of it being rook, knight, bishop, queen, king, bishop, knight, rook, it could be rook, rook, bishop, bishop, knight, knight, queen, king. From left to right, of course. Or any set of that, or any combination. They don't have to be next to each other, or next to their own piece, and it's really weird. I think the only rule is that you have to have one dark square bishop and one light square bishop. But other than that, everything's perfectly normal. You can still castle in this position. It actually looks kind of funny. But whatever. Now, Bughouse is 4-player chess that's played on 2 boards in teams of 2. So, say I was playing with my friend Dan. I don't actually know any Dans, but whatever. So, Dan is playing as the black pieces on one board, and I'm playing as the white pieces on the other board. And say I capture with my bishop the opposing piece's bishop. So I capture the black bishop. Now, the black bishop that I captured is put into a pool for Dan. And Dan, instead of moving a piece on his turn, can instead put black pieces from the pool onto his board. Now, the reason on the screen it says 4-player shogi on 2 chessboards, is because shogi has the same rule of putting pieces that you've captured onto the board, but it's 2-player. So that's where Bughouse. Bughouse is kind of just like shogi, but with different rules, but with chess rules. And it's, like I said, 2-player Bughouse instead of 4-player. Armageddon is when you need a tiebreaker. So, for example, how Armageddon works is that one side usually has white usually has 7 minutes, and black has 5 minutes, or it's 6 minutes for white and 4 minutes for black. One or the other. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. And you might think, well, why is black given such a strong disadvantage on time, or white has such a strong advantage on time? It's because if the game ties or is drawn, black wins. So black has an extra win condition, but white has extra time. And this is, like it shows here, when you need a tiebreaker. And I personally don't like Armageddon games, I think, because it encourages a really bad style of play from both sides. However, it's fine. And 4-player chess is, well, I want you to take a guess at that one. Gambit and traps. Gambits are when you give up some material, usually a pawn, in order to gain a positional advantage. And now I'm going to be going over in my tactics video, I'll go over the basics of the Evans Gambit, because it will show us, 1, what a gambit is, and 2, what tempo is. But just understanding this definition is that it's usually you give up some bit of material in order to, usually a pawn, you don't want to give up too much, in order to gain a strong positional advantage. Now, a trap is where you invite the other side to play a move or capture a piece that seems like it could be captured for free or without problem. However, you have a very strong counter to that capture or that move that results in you gaining a material or positional advantage. Usually material. Now, traps are a lot harder to set up and a lot harder to spot, but they can be extremely deadly. Phases of the game. So, the opening is the first 10 to 15 moves, usually, and it's basically when both sides are developing pieces, their minor pieces, fighting for the center, and trying to get their king out of the center of the board and castling it off to one side. Now, usually the opening ends and the mid-game starts once one side has developed enough pieces and they can start a serious attack. Now, I personally like watching mid-games more than anything, and I believe it's the most fun in chess because pieces get traded down, magic can happen, pawns are being pushed, knights sacrificed, magic across the board. And the reason I say magic across the board is simply because both sides have the most amount of options to attack. Then it's all about deciding which option they believe is best. And that's not as easy as it sounds, because while you could think, oh, I'll just calculate which one's the best. Well, it's not always that easy to calculate, and sometimes the advantages of a move only come down 5 to 7 moves later. Now, and finally we have the endgame. And the endgame is when most of the material on the board and most of, if not all, the minor pieces, which are knights, bishops, and rooks, and also maybe the queen, has been traded off the board. And now there are less possibilities on the board. There's no magic that can happen, and you have to start playing this like a machine. You want to get your king out and make your king extremely active, push pawns to the end of the board, get queens into the game, get queens in deep. Good things are going to happen. And if you can get your queens, and if you can get more queens onto the board. Finally, we have the stalemate, the 50 move rule, and the threefold repetition. Now, stalemate you probably know, especially if you're a newer player playing against AIs and you don't know how to finish your endgames. 50 move rules and threefold repetition are less understood and honestly less known rules in the game. Now, a stalemate is when one side has no legal moves to make, and this is a draw. Because you might think, well, they can't make any moves, so they've lost, right? Well, no. Because the king is not attacked, he just can't move. It's important to know that in a stalemate that the king can't move. If the king can move, or if the king isn't in check. If the king's in check, then it's not a stalemate, it's checkmate. But if the king can't move, then you kind of just prevented yourself from winning, because now he can't do anything. It's a draw. Threefold repetition is when both sides repeat the same moves going back and forth 3 times in a row. This is a draw. Usually it's done when neither side wants to make the first move and they're kind of waiting for the other person to make a move. So you're just waiting for the other side to make a mistake, but the other side doesn't want to make a mistake, so they want you to make a mistake. So you both just kind of go back and forth, and eventually the position draws out. You can also use the rule of threefold repetition in order to force draws when you're in a losing position. And the 50 move rule is when both players make 50 consecutive moves without moving a pawn or capturing a piece. This is also a draw. Now, you might think, why 50 moves? Why not just let them play it out until a piece is captured, or they move a pawn? Well, sometimes there's no pawns on the board, and it's just king and rook versus king and rook, and now neither side is going to be able to do anything. So the position is completely drawn out, and you can play it to hope they blunder, but they probably won't. A Botez gambit. This is a... I'm sorry, Alexandre Botez, if you end up seeing this. I had to. When you accidentally blunder your queen. Now, it's given the name after the current world female chess champion, Alexandre Botez. It happens to the best of us. You might wonder, well, she's world female chess champion. Why would she blunder her queen? Well, sometimes we all make mistakes in the heat of passion, Jimbo. We're trying to live our life. Just let us be free. Now, we're going to go over what a Denny's move is. Now, this isn't a standard chess move or chess term by any definition. It's more just something me and my friends say while we're playing the game. And I'm not going to go over the lore of why we say that's an absolute Denny's moment or a Denny's move. I'm just going to try and give a better explanation so people who weren't there can understand. Now, when was the last time you went to Denny's? I don't know about you, but for me it was either at 11 in the morning while I was hungover or at 2 in the morning while I was just pissed drunk, because the place is 24 hours and gives pancakes. I'm not going to lie, at 2 in the morning while I'm drunk as hell, pancakes sounds fucking amazing. So a Denny's move is the idea that if you were in Denny's while you're drunk or hungover and you're just playing a chess game, you don't want to calculate, you're drunk or hungover. You want to just get back to eating your goddamn pancakes. So you just kind of play a move that looks like it could be good, but you have no idea if it's any good. So you just kind of throw it out there. Now, sometimes the Denny's move just doesn't work. Now, in this situation, you need to go to an IHOP move. Now, an IHOP move is if you don't go to IHOP when you're drunk or hungover, you want to enjoy those fluffy buttermilk pancakes. You want to enjoy that breakfast sampler. So you're trying. So you kind of, this is a move where you've thought it out a bit more. You made a Denny's move, and now Denny's is full though. So you gotta head to IHOP, even though usually IHOP's full. So you gotta head. So you normally have to head to Denny's, but in this situation it's reversed. You made the blunder. Now you gotta try and hold on for dear life while the opponent bends you over a table, because you went to Denny's instead of IHOP. He was playing IHOP moves. Now, a Denny's Gambit. This is something of my own definition here. Um, this is just when you keep throwing checks at your opponent and hope it works. You don't know if it's gonna checkmate the opponent, but it could if you just keep throwing checks at the opponent, move him up the board a little bit. Could be interesting. So you just keep throwing checks, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well then what do I have to lose? The game? Pfft, I'll just go play another one. Yeah. Other than that, that's really all the terms I want to discuss. The tactics video will be up reasonably soon. I'm just lazy, and I hope this was informative. Anyway, peace.